Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop. This is a Knapp joint. The Knapp joint. It's a fascinating joint, and it's basically a dovetail with a backstory. Dovetails have been around for millennia. As long as people have known how to work wood, they've known how to make dovetails. With a saw and a chisel, it's really not that complicated. You just remove the waste in between and you get a joint that fits. But humans love advancement, and comes the Industrial Revolution, everything needed power. And you could do things faster and more efficiently and more accurately and consistently with power. But the problem is, dovetails were a bit tricky to figure out. After the Civil War, everything was being run on power tools. And even dovetails, you can cut these with a bandsaw relatively easily. Even the tails, if you just tilt the table, you can cut those with a bandsaw. But when it comes to doing half-blind dovetails, power tools aren't very good at getting inside a three-dimensional corner. It just doesn't do it very well. Now yes, we do have ways of doing it. You can make rounded tails that fit into them nicely. But back in the day, it was kind of known as the thing. If you had dovetails on your furniture, it meant that everything was hand cut. And to the buyers back then, that was actually a bad thing. Machines meant accuracy and quality and efficiency and progress. Whereas now machines are kind of viewed as like the cheap way to do it. And of course, if you hand cut it, then it's done precisely, right? Well, no, hands make a lot of mistakes. And hand cut things tended to have more mistakes than machine cut things. No one could come up with a machine that could make half-blind dovetails until a fellow by the name of Knapp showed up at the scene. In 1879, Charles Knapp came up with a machine that made these really cool dovetail things. Kind of like a dovetail. And a machine could make these. The Knapp machine. He could make a whole cabinet worth of drawers in just a few minutes. What would take a person with a handsaw an hour or more, you could do very quickly. And they were new-fangled and interesting, and it was kind of the fashionable thing. This joint took off like wildfire all over the US. In a matter of a few years, you could find this just about anywhere you went. If you had a reputable woodworking cabinetry shop, they had a Knapp joint machine to make the Knapp joints. But time marches on, and eventually someone came up with a machine on how to make dovetails with a machine just as quickly and easily as a Knapp joint. And then overnight, they disappeared. You just couldn't find Knapp joints anymore. It was actually a rather steep decline of using the Knapp cutting machine. And from about 1880 until the turn of the last century, you would see these a lot. But as soon as the turn of the last century came around, they basically disappeared. The really interesting thing about the Knapp joint, though, is if you're going through an antique store and you're pulling out drawers and cabinets and looking at them, if you ever come across that pin and cove shape, you know exactly when that piece of furniture was made, somewhere between 1880 and 1900, because that's the only time this machine was in use. And it's one of those fascinating things when you're trying to date furniture. If you see that. But this brings us back to Wood by Wright in this channel. This is a machine cut joint. It is designed to be cut by machines and not by hand tools. But I'm a hand tool woodworker, and I like the look of that joint, and I'd like to do it. But I don't have a Knapp machine. I mean, if you've got one that I could borrow, let me know. I'd love to play with it. But I want to make these with hand tools. So let's have a little bit of fun. So let's start by laying this out. But the really interesting thing is this side would be the tails, but in this case the tails are the pins, and the pins are called the Cove. So let's make the pins first. And even though I usually make tails first, today we're going to be making pins first. First, we need to start out by actually laying out the tails, or in this case, the pins. And we're going to create 3 circles on the end of this board. And these will be evenly spaced out so they touch each other just a slight bit, and they touch the outside just a slight bit. What size these are, you can use your own imagination, figure out what looks good to you, because nothing about this is all that terribly perfect. We also need to come down either side, and this will be the relief of how far we are going into the other board. We're going to cut off that, what would be a half tail, I guess, and come down in it with ripping it, and then come in and cross-cut and remove that little piece in there. We're going to do this on both sides, and this will actually allow the front board of the drawer to then overlap either side, so it just looks a little bit nicer. You can have these come all the way outside. In the original machine, you could actually set it up to do however many of these you want in a row. we want to cut down in between each one just about halfway, and then I'm going to come in with the turning saw and take off the majority of the work. I can actually get this pretty close to the line, and then I just have to come in with a couple files and smooth it out and make them roughly circular. This is the point where you can get really, really picky and make them absolutely beautiful, but I'm just getting them close enough for what I'm doing. We want to transfer those tails onto the pin board, or in this case we're transferring the pins onto the Cove board, and you can see how those circles then come out. We need to make sure we have the exact center of each of these circles, because most of this material we're actually going to remove with an auger bit, and you can actually count how many rotations you are with these. I know that with this particular one, every rotation is a 1/16 of an inch deep, and so I want to take these all down to the exact same amount, and so I'm just counting 16 rotations of each one. Then with a chisel, remove the waste in between each of the coves, and then chisel right back to our line and make it nice and straight across there. Now you notice how the cuts from the auger bit didn't make it exactly to the outside. Now if I was doing this precisely, I probably could make that work, but I found it actually just a little easier to come in with a carving tool with the right radius and remove those back to the line. Plus, this is a very enjoyable step. This is the part that I really enjoy. So I'm going to take that down and then come in with a chisel and flatten out the back and take it all the way back and get a nice little shape on there, and you can test it back and forth, make sure that it actually works, and until you get a nice fit where it slides all the way back in. And normally you're going to be clamping them up in a whole box, but because I'm just doing this as part of the first one, I'm just going to put one little clamp on there. Next we need to actually make the pins that go through the pins into the coves. Now on the original Knapp, these would have actually been carved out of the end piece and you wouldn't have to put these in, but in my case I need to actually put the pins in through because I don't have a way to actually cut them out with hand tools. So we're making it as a 3-step process. So we have those holes that we marked earlier. Now we can come back in with the 3/8 inch bit, put the hole all the way through the tail and into the pin, and then drive in the pins through the pins into the... Oh, that gets really confusing really fast. Now we've driven those all the way in, we can come in and cut them off. I'm not worrying about using a flush cut saw here because I'm going to be scratching up the surface. That's perfectly fine. We can come into the plane and clean all that out and smooth it out and make it nice and pretty, and that's about it. A Knapp joint. Yeah, you can do it by hand. Do you really want to? Well, there's no real reason to, but it is a lot of fun, so there you go. Hope you liked it. Knapp joint. Now, there are many things about this. I made it with hand tools. It was never intended to be made with hand tools. It's a stupid joint with hand tools. If you're going to make a hand tool dovetail, then make a dovetail. It's a far better joint and easier to work with and just all around a generally better joint. However, that does look rather interesting. That's kind of fascinating. And yes, I have to come clean. I once made a box with Knapp joint corners because it looked kind of interesting and it fit the style I was going with. Is it needed? Is it required? No. No, absolutely not. But it is kind of interesting and an interesting piece of history. Maybe someday I'll get my hands on an actual Knapp joint machine and we could have a little bit of fun playing around with that. But until then, you can hand cut them, though they're not the exact same as that they were beforehand. So I hope you like this. If you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, snide remarks, throw those down below. And you may have noticed I didn't stop through this and say, hey, this is sponsored by such and such a mattress company. And that's because you guys sponsor this channel, and I want to say a huge thank you to you. Everyone scrolling over there, they are some of the patrons on Patreon. Without you being here sponsoring this channel, then I would have to stop the video and do sponsors in the middle. So thank you for that. If you'd like to find out more about that, you know what to do, down below. And I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. After all of that, I've gotten really tired. I gotta go take a nap. Yeah, okay, I know, bad joint. You all saw it coming, but let's just go ahead and talk about this later. For now, let's stick a pin in it.